Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into another thrilling chapter of Minjun's journey in the Invincible Hunter Squad. In our last episode, we saw him tackle the intense special firearms training, facing off against unpredictable monsters and racing against the clock. Stick around to see how our hero, Minjun, faces off against some of the most formidable creatures yet. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an adventure. Let's get started. The elevators start descending, and we see Minjun lost in thought as he heads to the underground levels. He realizes he fell for the corporal's provocation and regrets drawing attention to himself. But he knows he's not mature enough to let provocation slide. As the elevator doors open, his demonic aura senses the demons in the trial. At the top level of the building, the other candidates are glued to the score screen, excited about the trial. They're discussing the bet between the two candidates and are confused about how a private could hope to win against a corporal. Suddenly, a harsh tremor shakes the ground, causing some to lose their footing in fear. The candidates wonder if it was an earthquake. Dongjin doesn't think so. They look at the screen and are shocked to see one of the monsters moving towards the other monster in Minjun's lane. The door opens, and Minjun makes his way through the lane, wondering about the tremor. His face shows confusion and instinct as he sees a gigantic one-eyed monster with huge claws and horns devouring a large rat monster. It looks like Minjun will have to face the toughest monster yet. Realizing it might just be another big body monster, he calms down but is puzzled by why it's eating another monster. The monster spots Minjun and rages, throwing the rat at him. Minjun dodges and lands safely, a thought entering his mind. I hope fried chicken is on the menu for dinner. Let's get this over with fast. He notices a civilian target he's not supposed to shoot and realizes he can't shoot mindlessly. The monster steps towards him, and Minjun prepares some demonic energy in his left hand, wondering why the creature is rampaging. The monster tries to grab him with its massive claws, but Minjun strikes with a fistful of demonic energy, carving through the creature's arm with 3 precise slashes. The monster screams in pain as its hand is torn apart. Minjun smiles, thinking he just needs to shoot it down. However, his attention is caught again as the monster's arm begins to regrow right before his eyes. Instead of a hand, it regrows a giant sword. The troops watching the screen are confused about what's happening and why one of the monsters is missing. Minjun looks at the situation and has a revelation. If the first monster is missing, then the second monster must be the Cyclops. Cyclops, also known as devouring demons, consume energy to enhance their regenerative and attacking capabilities. Minjun wonders what could have provoked this usually passive creature to break out of captivity and go on a rampage after devouring the other monster. It turns out it was our boy Minjun and his intense demonic aura. Minjun smirks, realizing the chaos Minjun inadvertently caused. Meanwhile, as Minjun finds himself airborne, dodging the Cyclops' aggressive slashes. He loads his gun, knowing it's training, but decides to indulge in some firearm fun. Bullets tear through the Cyclops' eye, and the monster roars in pain. As Minjun lands, he notices the Cyclops' eye isn't regenerating quickly, giving him an opening to end it. But the monster quickly turns toward him. Minjun runs toward it, ready to strike, but the Cyclops retaliates by swinging its sword arm. He's taken by surprise as the Cyclops, even blinded, knows his exact location. Minjun dodges and ducks the arm slash, but the monster attacks with its other hand, slamming him into the ground. It looks dire, but Minjun manages to block the attack. As he struggles to hold back the monster, he wonders why the training center would unleash such a violent creature. Despite crushing its eye, the Cyclops continues to pinpoint his location precisely. Back at the elevator, Minjun enters the second lane with his oversized LMG, worried about Minjun's safety. He blames himself for letting things escalate. An energy-fed Cyclops is no match for a private at all. He rushes through the lane, hoping Minjun hasn't met his demise. Meanwhile, the corporal is having a blast in the trial, cruising toward a finish time of 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Confident that Minjun never stood a chance, he plans how he'll spend Minjun's salary on his upcoming vacations. But as he nears the finish line, his hopes are dashed. There stands Minjun, casually inspecting the finish button. He glances back at the corporal with an indifferent expression, then flashes a devious smile and presses the button. The corporal's face falls, realizing his plans have just been ruined, at least for now. Ninja arrives at the spot where Minjun battled the Cyclops. He looks at the gruesome scene and asks how Minjun managed to bring the monster to such a state. The carnage above the monster's chest is graphic enough to shock even the corporal. Minjun walks out of the elevator to cheers and applause. The others show their admiration for him after defeating the fed Cyclops. Dongjin rushes in, asking if Minjun is okay. Minjun reassures his buddy that he's unharmed. Dongjin eagerly asks how he defeated the Cyclops, and Minjun credits it all to Dongjin's teachings. The corporal seethes with jealousy. One of the troops points out that Minjun won the bet fair and square. The corporal smacks the troop on the back of the head, threatening him for speaking out of turn. He claims it was an unfair situation and makes excuses, insisting he couldn't have won under those circumstances. He argues that the special firearms training was designed for 2 monsters, and he did defeat 2. He challenges how many newbies they've defeated and emphasizes that Minjun only took down 1 monster. Pointing fingers, he insists it was an unfair situation and pressures Dongjin to agree. Dongjin, feeling intimidated, hesitates to respond until ordered to speak up by the corporal. Minjun wonders why the corporal has to be so difficult. Despite the unexpected turn of events, he doesn't feel good about defeating the monster with his bare hands. He considers letting go of the bet. Watching the corporal badger Dongjin, he decides he can't let it slide. Someone from the crowd steps forward, hearing the commotion. In a bold voice, they mock the corporal, asserting that the newbie took the bigger risk and that the corporal should be ashamed. The corporal turns to see who spoke up. The mystery person enlightens everyone about the Cyclops, explaining they start harmless but become ferociously challenging once provoked. They argue that Minjun faced a much greater threat, and everyone present realizes the wisdom behind their words. It turns out to be none other than Sergeant Lee Soon-ho. The corporal is embarrassed, trying to save face by mocking Sergeant Lee's rank in front of the junior sergeant. Sergeant Lee shuts him down, saying that the corporal is the one always showing off and tells him to stop, embarrassing him over his jokes. The sergeant decides to double down. He tells the corporal that everything that doesn't go his way becomes a joke to him. Sergeant Lee says that being of higher rank is great because he gets to embarrass stubborn donkeys like the corporal. Minjun smiles, realizing that's how things work, while the corporal turns red with embarrassment, anger, and every other bad feeling. This is the face everyone wanted to see. Comment down below if you're satisfied as well. Sergeant Lee turns to the corporal, seeing his reaction, and asks if he has anything to say. The corporal brushes it off and says he doesn't. The sergeant tells him he's right, he doesn't have anything to say because he shouldn't leave the corporal embarrassed in front of his juniors. As Sergeant Lee walks away, it's evening, and Dongjin and Minjun are standing outside, cleaning and conversing. They talk about Sergeant Lee receiving a double promotion. Dongjin tells Minjun that Sergeant Lee was a special case since he had the highest grade in the advancement exams. He continues, explaining that the true rank promotion has now been made and available because a staff sergeant who got it caused an accident in a dungeon. Sergeant Lee was the last case of this double rank promotion. Minjun wonders if there are ways to get special advancements, and Dongjin tells him that there are exceptions, like rescuing a civilian during an emergency or achieving outstanding accomplishments in a monster hunt, but they're all subjective cases. He tells Minjun to forget that the regulation even exists, as many hunters who have advanced with it. Minjun acknowledges this, realizing that subjective means the commander will have the final say. Desperate for advancement, he doesn't wish danger on civilians but is almost disappointed that there aren't enough incidents happening on this border. He wants to advance already, even though he's been a private for only 2 days. Dongjin encourages him as Minjun wishes for a gate to appear. Just as he thinks that, alarming activity spreads across the camp, and a broadcast from the control center announces that middle bats have appeared at an all reserve. They instruct all hunters to gather there and immediately install the protective shield. Dongjin tells Minjun that they are going, and Minjun grins. Middle bats are monsters the size of a human child that live in colonies and attack. Individually, they do not pose a threat, but they can spit fireballs, which could be disastrous for the old reserve. The entire military camp could be blown away if the old reserve is compromised. Two soldiers stand guard at the old reserve as the bats approach. One soldier points his gun at the monsters, but the other stops him from shooting. He tells him that shooting might provoke an attack, compromising the old reserve. The soldier questions this decision, asking if he should just watch the monsters. The other soldier, thinking smarter, suggests they observe since the bats aren't approaching. The issue has been reported, and a squad with a protective shield is on the way. The soldier with the itchy trigger finger asks what happens if the monsters blow up the old reserve, making his comrade feel super nervous. They imagine an incredibly huge explosion that would devour the entire military camp. They start panicking, wondering what they should do and why the middle bats showed up in this spot. Finally, Minjun walks in, stating that he will draw their attention. The soldiers are surprised to see a newbie being this bold. They scream at him to fall back since he doesn't have any equipment. To Minjun, the middle bats are guests who will help him advance quicker. Not only will he get recognition for saving the military camp, but he will also gain a ton of experience points. As he walks towards the middle bats, flaunting his demonic energy, he thinks of the Cyclops and remembers that monsters are attracted to his demonic energy. The bats immediately notice his aura and start circling around him. He smiles at how perfectly it worked out and gets ready to take them down. A squadron carrying a large crate rushes towards the old reserve but suddenly halts as Dongjin is completely stunned. Sergeant Lee looks at the idiots just standing there and tells them to install the shield immediately. They are so stunned that they have trouble speaking but eventually snap out of it and tell him that Private Kim Min-yeon is fighting all of the bats single-handedly without any equipment. Sergeant Lee, not caring, shouts at the recruits to deploy the shields. Meanwhile, Minjun is ripping through the bats one by one. He realizes it's taking too long and needs something to kill the bats faster. Sergeant Lee runs towards him, telling him to fall back. Minjun ignores him, wanting all the experience points. He notices Sergeant Lee has a baton in his hand, which catches Minjun's attention. Using his demonic energy on Sergeant Lee's stomach, Sergeant Lee thinks his stomach is acting up. Kim approaches, pretending to be worried, and asks to borrow the baton before taking it himself. He tells the sergeant he'll be back in a moment, his smile widening as he knows fun times are starting. Minjun rushes back into battle with the shock baton, ready to rip those middle bats apart, taking out multiple bats in one hit, and having an absolute blast. Sergeant Lee stands there, looking at Minjun with pure and filtered surprise. Minjun is overpowering every single one of those middle bats. Two soldiers carrying equipment notice a bat flying above them. The bat has a nasty look on its face, foaming with flames and its eyes glowing red with violence. Sergeant Lee orders the soldiers to fire at the bat, promising to take full responsibility if something happens. They aim their guns at the flying creature, but it suddenly stops and starts staring in confusion. Minjun, with a smile on his face and the shock baton in his hand, strikes quickly, overpowering the bat. Electricity crackles through the sky as Minjun's baton connects with the monster, leaving the squad below him wondering how he even got there. The troops successfully install the protective shield, and they all gather around it, collecting the middle bat corpses. Someone calls out to Sergeant Lee, who quickly salutes. It is the operations officer, Captain Yunchik. He tells Sergeant Lee he did a good job but asks where the middle bats even emerged from, as no one detected them on the radars. The captain reacts to the stench of the roasted bats and asks who barbecued those monsters and how many were killed. Sergeant Lee tells him it was a total of 30 bats. Wondering where the commander was, Sergeant Lee informs the captain that the battalion commander will be arriving soon. The captain acknowledges this, thinking how embarrassing it was that the captain was absent during an emergency. He asks Sergeant Lee if he was the one to roast the bats. Sergeant Lee denies this, knowing it had to be someone extremely skilled with the electric baton. The captain asks for the identity of the valiant fighter. Sergeant Lee tells him that all 30 bats were killed by a single soldier and to report it as such. The captain is shocked, unable to believe that every single middle bat was killed by just one individual. Minjun walks up behind them as they're talking and tells Sergeant Lee that he came to return the baton he borrowed, holding a broken baton with wires sticking out of it. He asks whether the baton was expensive because it sure isn't usable anymore after his exploits. Fighting the flying rodents, there's no wonder everyone is suspicious of Minjun. He had shown his strength publicly, and now all eyes are on him. In the battalion commander's office, Sergeant Lee seriously asks Minjun if he has re-enlisted. Minjun denies this but is then asked whether he's a regressor. He denies that as well. Sergeant Lee tells him never to do anything rash like this again, warning him that he might have been lucky this once, but luck won't always be on his side. Minjun thinks it wasn't luck but keeps his mouth shut. Sergeant Lee explains that Hunter Corps are a special unit, smaller in scale and scope with 4 battalions each, and fewer troops than in the regular military. Minjun realizes that not all the awakened keep enlisting but doesn't want to say it, fearing it will only draw more attention to him. With a patriotic fervor, Sergeant Lee asks Minjun if he knows how this all works. Minjun, looking like a lost puppy, doesn't reply. With passion and determination, Sergeant Lee tells Minjun that every single person in the Hunter Corps is awakened. Not all of them are fighters, many specialize in different fields like administration, tactics, weapons research, and monster theory. Minjun is surprised, having thought the entirety of the Hunter Corps was about fighting. Sergeant Lee clarifies that advancement is based on accomplishments, and one must be awakened to achieve them. Minjun looks up at Sergeant Lee, wondering why he's getting an exposition dump so early in the morning. Sergeant Lee tells him that if he expects something fun, then his expectations will come true. Minjun's eyes sparkled with anticipation. What did Sergeant Lee have in store for him? As we see a car driving towards HQ, we know someone important is coming. This isn't just any regular person. The car's number plate has 2 golden stars. The 104th Hunter Corps resident celebrity was arriving, the hunter who had killed the most monsters out of anyone. A bearded man sits in the back of the car, looking like he's being driven around by Colonel Lee Jr. The car drives into the headquarters and stops. The door opens, and out steps a burly man. This deadly hunter was about to visit their battalion, and he probably had a whole lot to teach everyone about. Battalion Commander Lee Jinbeam salutes hard, yelling at the top of his lungs, while the smaller fry, the captains and others, sweat nervously, standing in the presence of the most terrifying Hunter Corps member in the world. The man approaches and shakes hands with none other than our boy Sergeant Lee. Sergeant Lee is genuinely shocked, but appreciative that a man of such caliber is greeting him. Minjun, standing nearby, thinks this guy is quite lively and wonders how strong he is. Being a 2-star hunter from the Corps, he must be something special. The hunter walks up to Minjun, asking if he is Kim Minyon. Surprised, Minjun shakes hands out of courtesy, even though he doesn't care much about anyone. He immediately notices how strong the hunter's grip is. The hunter pats Minjun hard on the back and tells everyone to be at ease. The hunter asks if they figured out which gate the middle bats came from. The battalion commander replies that the gate was 1.2 kilometers north of the battalion headquarters on a hill, and they were already investigating the gate's rank and had restricted access to the area. The 2-star hunter instructs them to inform the division commander's office directly once the gate's rank is confirmed. He then inquires about their radar problem. A captain notes that the alarm had not gone off until the middle bats approached the battalion, but there was no equipment malfunction, so they were checking for blind spots. The hunter suggests it might have to do with the sheer numbers of the demons and advises reporting it to the divisional ordnance office to set up to more radars. The captain eagerly agrees, showing pure respect to this 2-star legend. Minjun, meanwhile, is having the time of his life watching everyone tense up. The hunter turns his attention to Minjun, praising his courage and quick response but advising more caution and equipment next time. Minjun apologizes, though internally he disagrees, thinking that if he had taken the time to get equipment, the battalion might have gone up in flames. It turns out the 2-star hunter is just joking. He's proud of Minjun for defeating the middle bats by himself, saying that if he hadn't reacted so fast, the old reserve would have exploded. The captains, wanting some appreciation but getting none, Look on. The hunter then presents a gift from the division commander to Minjun, sticking a new rank insignia onto his chest. Minjun has finally achieved the rank upgrade he wanted. The 2-star hunter congratulates him on the advancement, stating that under regular circumstances, this wouldn't have happened so quickly, but exceptional soldiers should be rewarded promptly. Minjun is now Private First Class Kim Min-yeon. The hunter orders the battalion commander to give Minjun a vacation, 3 days and 2 nights of relaxation. Minjun is slightly shaken by the rapid advancement, but the vacation makes him really happy. He can now vibe in the PC room without any exceptions. Military life is getting more exciting by the minute. As Minjun and Captain Kim walk through the hallway, the captain shows his appreciation, glad Minjun accomplished so much and got commended. Minjun thanks him, saying he's just as joyous. The captain asks what Minjun plans to do outside the HQ, noting it's his first time going home after enlisting. Minjun has no idea. This is uncharted territory for him. The scene switches to the bustling city streets, lights and banners everywhere, cars on the roads, and people walking around. Minjun walks with a pep in his step, but the first thing he wants to do is find a PC room. He plans to play Dungeon Power Fighter there, not wanting to go home because of the restricted area and lack of internet connection. He intends to spend the next 3 days and 2 nights in the PC room without wasting time traveling. As he walks into the PC room, he hears a commotion behind him. 2 friends are talking, one feeling wronged by the soldiers. The other asks if he went to that cave again, and the first guy mentions he was there to pick mushrooms, angry about being stopped despite having permission and depositing money. They discuss how the mountain smelled foul with toxicity, causing headaches. Minjun, eavesdropping, asks them where the place is. Nervously, they decide to tell him and eventually drop him off near a place called Hukken, a restricted area. Minjun thanks them for the ride. One of the guys asks if Minjun can resolve whatever is on the mountain. Minjun, with determination, assures them the restriction will be lifted by tomorrow and they'll be able to go there again. They notice his private first-class stripes and drive off quickly. Minjun looks up at the mountain, sensing the demonic energy radiating from within. He decides to spend his vacation investigating this instead of staying in the PC room. Near the cave entrance, guards wearing gas masks protect the area because of the overwhelming demonic energy. Minjun hides between trees, noting the heavy security. He gestures, sending a wave of demonic energy towards the guards. They breathe it in, feeling their stomachs hurting. They decide they need a potty break, thinking no one would come here anyway. The entrance was now empty, with no security at the cave's opening whatsoever. Minjun started walking into the caves, slowly placing one foot in front of the other. As soon as he entered, he saw the place glistening with demonic energy, which put a smile on his face. However, there was one problem. When he placed his hand on the ground to sense anything in the area, he couldn't detect any monsters whatsoever. Minjun wondered why the demon energy was so dense in this cave if there weren't any monsters. As he ventured deeper, he realized it didn't matter if there were no monsters. All he wanted was that sweet, demonic energy. He began to absorb it all, the demonic energy flowing into his palm, giving him the power he craved so much. His stats were increasing, rising steadily with every moment. He looked at the notification window that appeared in front of him. He had now reached the demon energy threshold, enhancing his skill called Corruption and unlocking a new skill called Nightwalker. Minjun was overjoyed. This was a phenomenal turn of events. Not only had he enhanced one of his skills, but he had also unlocked a brand new one. As he looked at the status window, he thought about the sheer amount of luck needed to get this for free. His strength, agility, and stamina were at 60 points, and his demonic energy was now at 15 points. He looked at his hand, feeling the power surging through him, free demonic energy and a usable skill without any effort. This was a major win. Nightwalker allowed him to summon a shadowy figure called the Nightwalker. He knew about this skill because he had used it a lot on his Icar card. Its specialty was assassinating targets from stealth, but there was one downside. The summon needed regular demonic energy to be maintained. He raised his arms, ready to show off his new powers, and ordered the Nightwalker to emerge. The little ghost that appeared was worth all the demonic energy he had to feed it. It might look cute, but the Nightwalker was more dangerous than anyone could anticipate. However, Minjun was shocked by how tiny the Nightwalker was. He was confused. Was this a dimension travel penalty? Was it because his demonic energy stat was too low? This tiny creature seemed weak, but then he realized its small size meant it could hide in shadows, making it a perfect assassin. 3 days and 2 nights passed quickly, and Minjun was back at HQ. As soon as he returned to the dorm, he mentioned his vacation to his comrades, who gathered around him, recognizing him as the guy who advanced in the shortest time to date. They noticed he also got a vacation from the division commander and a badge from the 2-star hunter. Minjun looked around and noticed someone familiar to whom he had brought a gift, his buddy Dongjin. He handed Dongjin the gift, which turned out to be a bottle of moisturizer. This was odd because soldiers were more known for roughing it out. Nonetheless, Dongjin was genuinely gleeful at the sight of it, thanking Minjun and saying he would really use it well. As their banter continued, Junbeat in special firearms training mocked their friendship, asking Minjun to bring him some Maxim magazines. However, Minjun had only brought some instant coffee with the same name. The guy accepted his Maxim packs with a sad and annoyed look, while Minjun and Dongjin joked about Minjun becoming a corporal one day. Now, a redhead entered the scene and mentioned he saw Minjun's name on the advancement examination list. Lackey noted that the application period for that was already over before Minjun even transferred. It hadn't even been a year since Minjun's enlistment, which meant he shouldn't qualify. Redhead surmised that it had to be the division commander who got him in, otherwise, it didn't make any sense. Minjun's comrades looked at each other, discussing how this could be possible. As the conversations in the dorm continued, Minjun couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and curiosity. He had come so far in such a short time, yet there were still so many mysteries to unravel. His new skills, the unexpected advancements, and the strange happenings at the cave all pointed to something bigger at play. Minjun's journey was far from over, it was just beginning. Stay tuned for the next chapter of Minjun's journey, where new allies, formidable foes, and untold adventures await. The path ahead is fraught with danger and excitement, and our hero is more prepared than ever to conquer it all.